Because what you, the unsung heroes in the wastewater industry do, matters. Join me, Suzan Chin-Taylor, the Doo-Doo Diva, a longtime veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry each week as I deliver industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, training and retaining great talent, sales and marketing, leadership and growth, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Doo-Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. We are continuing our visit, and this is the last episode in our series with Dr. Clare Monteau, CEO of her own consulting agency that specializes in empowering teams and leaders for success through a number of tools. And Claire and I met, for those of you who haven't had a chance to tune into the last couple of episodes, Claire and I actually met when we were both becoming certified everything DISC partners and facilitators and trainers. So thank you. Welcome here again, Claire, and continuing this fascinating dialogue.
Yes, thank you. Delighted to be here.
So in our final episode, we've been kind of building up to this. And now we're going to talk about something that may be an uncomfortable subject for people. But in life, conflict is inevitable. There is always going to be conflict. We are human beings. So the big key in the workplace is, how do you turn conflict that may be destructive into productive conflict, which is possible? There is such a thing as productive conflict. And I know it sounds like, what is it, an oxymoron? People are going, how can conflict ever be productive? But it truly can. And so with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Claire, in explaining what you mean about productive conflict and why this is so powerful for organizations, for health, for employee, the wellness, the financial wellness, productivity, retention, and even recruitment of new employees, because it's this is such a great place to work.
Yes. Conflict, such a difficult subject for most of us to talk about.
Yes.
And one of the ways I really like to think about this is, if we define conflict as a difference of opinions involving strong emotion, right, then we can all probably agree that a difference of opinion is a good thing to have, right? We know we get our best ideas when more than one person brings things forward. So we can all agree that differences of opinions are good, but it's this involving strong emotions that often make most of us pretty queasy, especially at work, right? But the thing is, what does strong emotion mean? It means people care. And none of us want to work in a place where people don't care about anything. So to speak to this inevitability, this is why it's inevitable. People are going to have different ideas and people are going to care about them. And we would never want to work in a place that wasn't true. So as managers, teammates, leaders, what we've got to do, again, as we talked about right in episode 1, it really starts with this self-awareness. How uncomfortable am I with conflict? And then how can I create environments where people can do it really productively? How can I do it really productive? Because there is a lot of great data to show that cultures or teams that cannot have conflict are not going to be successful. Really important that teams can have conflict, because if an individual doesn't feel like they can share their ideas, and unless it's the same idea as everyone else, you're not going to hear those good ideas, right? So there's got to be an environment created where people can have healthy conflict. And it starts with the manager. It starts with creating a culture where it's okay to have conflict, and that we understand behaviors that are healthy for conflict. And as you said, when do they become destructive, right? We've got productive behaviors and we've got destructive behaviors, and they're all on a continua. And it's like, how do we keep track of when something is healthy, doom, and then it drops off into unhealthy, destructive behaviors? So DISC, again, can help us really understand those continua that we all balance on, but we all balance on slightly different ones. So we can really use that as a shared language to understand, like, when do these behaviors, or when are they healthy and when do they become?
Well, that leads me into the fact that in this industry, often, especially at a wastewater treatment plant during an emergency, during a storm, or doing whatever, whatever breakdown, it's all hands on deck. And it becomes an extremely stressful situation. Also, yes, for contractors, when they're out in the field and there's an emergency they have to respond to, or let's say, we often have a saying in the industry, there's no perfect project except the one that hasn't started yet, is that the project begins and things, may not have gone according to plan, and, I guess switch gears. And this is when stress can run really high. And I think it's during those times when we're under stress that we aren't, not that we don't mean to be, but when we're under stress, it's hard to be our best selves. And this is when conflict can escalate. And very often, like you were saying, there's people that avoid conflict at all costs. There are some people that can handle it very well. And then there are some people that they're just combative. They're going to argue about everything. And then there's those ones that are, even after the fight or the conflict is over, they hang on to it like a dog with a bone, and they carry it forward into everything, and they can't let it go. It's all those different types that, when a situation erupts. And so I'd like to address, that is, how do we, because we're all going to face, especially in our industry, these really difficult, challenging, often dangerous, life-threatening, where we've got to be on our best because someone could get hurt. All right. How do we deal with stress to keep the conflict down, that once the situation has calmed down, to not carry it, or let's have a calm discussion? Like, what do they call that afterwards when military people are on a mission? The debrief. It's like, So what are we going to do during this debrief to make the most of what just happened so that it doesn't repeat itself?
Yes. So good. So it all starts with knowing your own tendencies during conflict, right? So if you are someone who tends to want to talk about, want to get problems out in the open and talk about them, right? That's a really healthy behavior until it becomes that you are just needing to, again, in conflict, in stress situations especially, we'll tend to get too attached to that being the only way we're going to get through it, right? And I need to win. And I hear this all the time, that people notice themselves. They go from, like, I want to get my opinion out, I want people to understand what I'm trying to say, healthy, to it suddenly veers into, I've got to win, right? I've got to win this argument, or I've got to win this conversation. So that's one kind of behavior that we might see. Some personality styles will do that. Other styles will do kind of the opposite, which is when things are really stressful, they will just shut down, right? And they won't share ideas. They'll just go quiet, back away, maybe get passive aggressive, but certainly hold some resentment. And so it's all about each of us recognizing what kind of behaviors do we engage in when we get in those stressful situations. As a manager, especially important, right? Because you're having an impact more on everyone around you as well. So it starts with recognizing that. What's your usual behavior? And then when does it slip into that kind of dysfunctional behavior or unhealthy behavior? And then in those debriefs, right, being able to talk about that, right? Recognize, like, this is what happens for me when things get stressful, and be willing to have conversations about that. I notice, for me, when I get in stressful situations, I'm much more likely to keep talking, to keep pushing my idea, to keep wanting to get resolution, and that is not a great thing to keep doing.
No, it isn't.
Someone else needs a bit of space, right, to reflect and to, come to their own, thought process. So we've got to recognize that we've got our own thing that we're going to get very attached to during stressful situations, and recognize that other people are going to do it differently, and then be able to talk about those differences. And it's hard to do that because we have a tendency to think that our way is the right way. But of course, we know that that isn't actually true, that there's lots of ways to go about things, and being willing to have conversations about how we're different, especially in times of stress, is absolutely critical for success.
Well, I like that comment that you made about there may be someone that will completely shut down. And none of us know that in a very like bad situation, that person actually may have the best solution to the issue at hand, but we're never going to get the opportunity to hear it because they're going to be afraid to voice it.
Yes, back to our conversation about creating cultures where people trust each other, right? Because building trust under conflict is probably not going to happen, right? We've got to have a lot of trust in the bank account so that when things do get stressful, right, people have there's some money there, right, that can get used in times of stress. So we build relationships, we build trust, we know each other, we recognize each other's fears, as we talked about in the past episodes, right? So that when stressful situations come up, again, people not sleeping, people having to work long shifts, all of the things that can come up, that in those moments we can trust each other enough to get through those differences that we have, and that somebody who wouldn't normally speak up knows that it's okay for them to do that, even in a high stress situation, right? Has the courage to do that, has the courage to take the risk to speak up, because they know that the relationship that they've built with their manager or on the team is strong enough to take that, because at times of stress, we might imagine it is we all back off into our corner. We all back off into our usual behaviors, our typical behaviors, our safety mechanisms. And our safety mechanisms are not great team building tools. They are our safety mechanisms built to protect us. So it takes a lot of awareness, and it takes a lot, again, of trust that's already there to be willing to meet in the middle, right? Meet when those challenges come up.
Well, something that I wanted you to explain, because, being very familiar with DISC and how a workshop facilitation takes place, is that what are some of the exercises, so people understand this, that are part of that quote unquote, that module? You do everything DISC and you use the profiles, but how profiles and the exercises within productive conflict all come into play. Maybe just share with us one of what you feel are some of the most impactful group exercises within going through one of these facilitations.
Yeah. So again, when you do things in a group, what's so great about this is that each style gets to not only be with people that are just like them, right? So we have that sense of like, oh, you experience conflict just like me, right? You just want to run away, and you just want it to get over with, and you just want everyone to go like each other again.
Yes.
Right. And those people over there don't seem to find that, those people over there want to fight, and they want to fight not because they want to fight, but because they want to get to the best answer. Those are two very different ways of handling conflict. So in a group facilitation, one of the most helpful things is that you just hear what's going on for those different styles. So again, that D-dominant style is all about like, let's get all the unaired things out in the open so that we can just deal with it, right? So we can just hear everyone's like frustration and even if it gets a little raucous, D styles are often totally comfortable with having like a big argument, and then they'll go out for coffee afterwards, Other styles are like, wait a second, I didn't think you would ever speak to each other again after that little altercation, right? And it's just, that's one of the biggest things, is just recognizing that people deal with things very differently, and it doesn't mean what we think it means, when people
and that it's not bad. It's, it's like bad. You do it the wrong way, I do it the right way, he does it that none of it is wrong. It's just like all the personalities, like not one is better than another. It just is.
Yeah, and it is. And when we don't understand each other, it leads to disaster, right?
Right.
So the So yeah, that the other parts of that module, the productive conflict module, that's really helpful is recognizing the things that we don't naturally do, right? So again, styles that tend to want to avoid conflict, tend to just want peace and quiet and, just a nice environment. They are never going to choose to talk about unresolved things, right? Because they're like, why would we do that? Why we'd just
Yeah.
never happened. And of course, in the long term, that doesn't actually work. It is actually sometimes really helpful to say, you know what, we need to talk about what happened, 3 weeks ago on that shift change, right? Where there was that thing that happened and there was something went wrong and we didn't deal with it back then. We need to resolve that, because otherwise 6 months later, people are still internally thinking about it, right? So we would never naturally do that. Perhaps if we're in that, again, there's certain styles that tend to just want to avoid conflict, but it's important to do that. So recognizing dealing with unresolved things is sometimes the right move, right? And it's never going to feel easy for me to do that, but it is sometimes going to be the right thing. It's the right it's situational leadership. It's like, what does this situation need in order to move my team forward? And this situation needs someone who's willing to talk about unresolved issues. Okay, I'm going to do it, right? And just that recognition that my way of doing things is not always the right way, right? And for other styles, right, for the people who might just want to have it out, right, and have the high energy conflict conversation, they have to recognize that that's intimidating for a lot of people, and that sometimes the right way of handling, of dealing with conflict or having productive conflict is going to be to sit down and listen to the other person, right? And reflect back what they're hearing and validate that that person is having a hard time. And that is going to do more to resolve conflict than, again, what might be your natural way, which is let's just have it out, or let's just kind of banter. That doesn't feel safe for a lot of people. So we got to learn to be willing to try different behaviors in order to have this thing called productive conflict, so that everybody feels heard, everybody feels safe, and to bring, again, to bring the things that are difficult and were difficult in a particular situation, and be able to talk about them in a really healthy, again, what we might say, in a grown-up way, right?
Right.
Bringing ourselves to that conversation. And that's how we build better behavior next time, right?
Exactly. And I also think, and when I first got into this, I saw this particular module as being incredibly powerful for small family-owned businesses. You get the mom, the dad, the son, maybe a nephew, daughter, like very close-knit small companies. There are a lot of them in this industry. Think about, plumbing outfits, septic outfits, skill trade. It's, maybe it's legacy, like second or third generation. And I see with the conflict, when they're struggling to maybe get the business to the next level, a lot of it is, okay, mom has a really great idea, but she knows that dad is maybe not really comfortable or doesn't like that, but she doesn't want to bring it up because guess what? She's got to go down and she's got to go to bed and lay next to this guy tonight or sit at the dinner table with him. And when you're a family-run business and you have a conflict within the business, let me tell you, you are going to take it home. There's no way to get around it. It's your relationship. Or, the son sees that mom and dad, we have got to do something different or we're going to become a dinosaur. He doesn't feel like he's being listened to because, again, he's the child, they're the parents. Oh, you're a young whippersnapper. This is the way we've always, it's that kind of thing, that conflict, where I see that this productive conflict module can be incredibly helpful in small, tightly held organizations to eliminate that barrier, to have fearless, open communication about what needs to be said so that it doesn't become an argument where now there are resentments and it can destroy the personal side of the relationship.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have two different brains, right? We don't have one for work and one for home, as much as
Yes.
that, although there is a TV series about that, but we don't, right? So even if, bringing up the family thing, it's very clear in those situations, right? You're in a family business, you're going home with the same person that you were, at
Yep.
work with. So clear. But for all of us, right, we've got the same brain. So it really is about finding ways to talk about what's hard, right? The way that mom shows up or the way that dad shows up in this conversation is different than how I would, perhaps. And
Mm,
recognizing like what's important to them. Leadership really is it's really about knowing yourself and recognizing what other people need and want. That those two things, if you do those two things well, you can figure everything else out, and conflict is just another opportunity to do that. It's what is driving my behavior, and again it's
right.
about fear and insecurity, and I'm not going to be listened to, and nobody thinks what I'm saying is valuable, or again whatever your version of that is. And then it's a judgment about the other person, right? They always do this, they don't
Ugh,
see the potential I do, or they're not concerned about the quality of the situation like I am, right? We have these beliefs about other people that we've created because of their behavior, and we can't get past that. So what this module and the tools can help us with is really helping like us have some understanding of what's driving that, and then how do I reach someone, right? So if I'm a kid and my father has been running this company for the last 20 or 30 years, and I'm trying to step into some more empowered leadership in this company,
right.
I've got to start talking to him about what he cares about, not what I care about. And any conversation is really about that in any kind of industry. Is really, I have leadership begins to be, I can't keep talking about what I care about. I have to start talking about what other people need and want, what other people are focusing on, because that is when literally people's brains will open up to, conversation and collaboration. And dad will then hear the son say, I really care about the quality of service that we're delivering to our customers, for example. And then dad can hear that, right? It's like, oh, is that what the new idea
There you
might do?
go.
Right? Oh, I thought you were just about, bringing new technology in because you're young and you want to have more technology in the business. So we've got to use language that connects with the person that we're trying to influence. And the only way we can do that is by knowing what they care about. So that's a great example, of how, and especially when we've got history with people, whether it's our family or, co-workers that we've worked with, it's hard to break that. We've got a story about them in our head that this is how they always are, and this is how they're going to respond. And we've got to get some tools to kind of wipe the slate a little bit and think, what if I do something different? What if I approach this differently? And guess what? Different things happen when the input is different, the output is different, right? Just like
Mm.
manufacturing. So the input of a conversation is what will change the output of a conversation, and we can change the input of the conversation. And DISC is again just a helpful tool for us to understand how to do that.
Well, Claire, that was fantastic. So many good points, tools, or things for us to all think about, no matter where we sit in this industry. And so I really want to thank you for helping me produce what I think is an incredibly helpful series for anyone in the industry, and even in any walk of life, that you can even apply it to your personal life. I remember making my husband doesn't work with me, but making my husband take an everything DISC profile. And then when the results came back, I looked at it and went, oh, well, that explains a whole heck of a lot. And it was a real eye opener for both of us as
Yeah.
to why in certain circumstances we were having a difficult time communicating, and it would erupt into an argument or resentment, and it's like, or again, like the shutdown is that,
Yeah.
oh, he's a D and I'm an I. And we know where that's going to go. It's
Yeah.
that he just cannot absorb all that
Yeah.
communication. So it's just, yeah, it's an amazing tool. So again,
And
thank you. And if someone wants to know more about you, wants to know more about DISC, or maybe utilizing some of these tools, talking to you about it for their organization, how can they learn more?
they can learn more by going to my website, claremonteau.com. You can book a call with me there. You can send me a note, and you can learn more about what's possible for you.
And we're going to have a lot more information in the show notes too. I also encourage you to go to the Everything DISC website. If you've never heard of it, it's by Wiley, just to see what that's all about. And there's a lot of great information there. And so again, Clare, thank you for this wonderful series and sharing your wisdom with me. And for those of you tuning in, I hope you enjoyed this and got something out of it. And until next time, keep it flowing.
Be sure to subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest on the show, click the Be a Podcast guest link below in the show notes for more information. Thanks again for joining me, the Doo Doo Diva, on this week's episode of the Smells Like Money podcast.